Hello again, YouTube, and I'm back with another video. And this video here is a video dealing with some, I won't say issues or anything. It's just, let's talk about, 24 volt inverters versus 48 volts versus 12 volts. There was some discussion recently. There was a video that sparked discussion from Philip over at Guns Games and Racing. And, part of the discussion was, hey, what do you think about, I suppose, he wanted our opinion on, what we thought about 12 volt versus 24 volt versus 48 volt systems. And a lot of people chimed in with their opinions, me and myself included. But, afterwards, I kind of started thinking, I'm like, well, there's a lot of people that chime in with their opinions and so forth. But, to ask the question, do your opinions really match up with the information or the data that's available, in relation to these systems? As opposed to coming out and saying, hey, you should just get a 12 volt inverter and be done with it, or a 24 volt inverter and be done with it, or a 48 volt inverter and be done with it because it's like way more efficient. A lot of people are saying a lot of things, but the question is, what does the information say about these inverters? So this particular video is not, I'm not going to give my opinion. Okay, that's not what this video is about. This video is about just presenting the information to folks out there so that they can make up their own minds. I give you the information, and then you make up your mind whether or not it's worthwhile buying, spending the extra money for a 48 volt system and a 48 volt battery bank or whatever else. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you some information. We're going to compare inverters. We're going to compare 24 volt inverters, and we're going to compare 12 volt inverters and 48 volt inverters, not by what people say. We're going to compare, not by what I say. We're going to compare these inverters based on the available information about those inverters. I will offer no opinion. I will just present the information. And I'm going to begin with my own inverter. This is a MagnaSign inverter. It is a MagnaSign model MS4024 PAE. It's a 24 volt inverter. And it has 4,000 watts. It produces up to 4,000 watts continuous output. Now, on the side of this particular inverter, you have a nameplate or a data plate. And this particular data plate gives specific information. You can't see it, but in a few minutes, we're going to take a look at the data sheets that's associated with this particular inverter. And then on that data sheet, it will give you some information that you can use, or that you should utilize, to make your decision as to what type of an inverter you want to buy. Whether it's a 12 volt inverter, a 24 volt based inverter, or a 48 volt based inverter. And the thing is, with that information, you can make an informed decision. Okay, it doesn't matter what type of inverter you buy, but it's always a good idea to make your decision based on the information that is available in relation to the equipment. Okay, now let's move on. Let's take a look at the data, or the data sheets, in relation to these inverters.
Okay, YouTube, I'm back here, and as I said, this video here it's not about my opinion, but it's about just sharing information so that those that may be considering buying, purchasing different types of inverters, whether it's 12 volt, 24 volt, or 48 volt, will have the appropriate information as opposed to opinions that we all have. Now I'm going to start with the data sheet, or the specifications for my particular inverter, and you can see here that this is from Magnum Energy, and this is I have an MS4024 PAE, and this is the information that you use to actually determine what the inverter is capable of. The MS4024 PAE and the MS4448 PAE. This is the 48 volt version of the MagnaSine inverter, and I have the 24 volt version. Now, one of the key things that you would look at is the inverter efficiency at peak. Now, at peak, under ideal conditions, my inverter is 93% efficient. Okay, 93% efficient. The 48 volt version of it is 94% efficient. Now, what exactly does that mean? Let's take a look at the calculator. Let's do the math. What that is saying is to get 4,000 watts, and if I divide that by 0.93%, that means it's going to, in order for me to get 4,000 watts out of my inverter, I'm going to have to put in 4,301 watts. So that means I have to put in more so that I can get the 4,000. So this 4,000 is 93% of 4,301. That's what the inverter efficiency is talking about. In order for me to get out 4,000 watts AC, then I need to put in 4,301 watts. That's the inverter efficiency. Now, also, I made mention about the wiring size. Now, at 4-aught wire, the maximum current you can get is like 266 amps. As far as under ideal conditions, like 96 degrees C or something like that. And the reason I say this is because according to my inverter data sheet, my maximum input current is 266 amps. And for a 48 volt system, for the Magnum series, it's 144 amps maximum. So, when it comes down to, well, you say, well, with the 48 volt version, you can use smaller wire size. Absolutely, you can. However, you are still limited by the amount of continuous input current that your inverter can utilize. And as you can see here, the inverter efficiency for a 24 volt system is 93%, and for a 48 volt system, it is 94%. Now again, let's go back to the calculator and kind of take a look. Let's see, for instance, in order to get 4,000 watts out of a 48 volt system that is 94% efficient, then we'll just divide that by 0.94, and that will give us, it'll say, well, as opposed to 4,300 watts for a 24 volt system, you have to put in 4,255 watts, okay, to get, so it's a little more efficient. Okay, not a whopping more efficient, but it's a little more efficient. Now, but you may want to say, well, that's just for your particular inverter. Well, let's take a look at Outback. Outback inverters, okay, Outback produces 24 and 48 volt versions as well. The sealed versions, and you have the vented versions of the vented models as well. Now, this is the data sheet. This is the specifications for their grid interactive inverter. And you can look at a lot of the same types of information that you would see in a typical data sheet, the way you saw what you just saw for my MagnaSine. Now, looking at the typical efficiency of their GFX 2524 and the GFX 3048, which are 24 and 48 volt systems respectively, you see here that for the 24 volt variety, it's 92% efficient, and the 48 volt variety, it is 93% efficient. And you can see their vented models, it's pretty much the same. It's 92% efficient, and their 48 volt models are 93% efficient. Now, I mentioned earlier on a comment that, if you get an inverter that is at 92% efficient, then you're doing pretty good. A battery based inverter, right? And these are grid interactive type inverters. So again, you don't see a huge amount of gap between the 24 volt model and the 48 volt model in terms of overall efficiency. Okay, but that's, again, these are, the top of the line inverters. You have the Magnum and then you have the Outbacks. Okay, just to kind of let you know, I'm looking at an Outback data sheet from Outback Power. Now, let's take a look at the popular one that folks are looking at now. And this one is, you can get from AliExpress. This is the PIP version that, folks are using. And you can see here it's $288. And this is their 24 volt or 2400 watts, 24 volt to 220. And so if you come down here, and this is a 24 volt based system, and if you come down and you look at their spec sheets, you can look at the efficiency. So they're saying here, and you can see that the continuous surge output and stuff like that, and you can see the nominal DC voltages from 12 to 24 volt to 48 volts. So I guess this is programmable depending on the model that you buy. But you can see here at the peak efficiency in line mode. Okay, in line mode is 95% efficient. However, in inverter mode, it's 91% efficient. So this is actually quite less than the Magnum inverter and the Outback inverter. So it's 91% efficient. Again, I offer no opinion, just data, just information. So let's continue on. Again, this is the information that you want to look at when you're thinking about buying a particular type inverter. Let's forget about people's opinions. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the information. Now, another inverter, Vautrin Energy. Let's take a look at what Vautrin says. This is Vautrin Energy, and this is another popular inverter model. And let's take a look at its peak efficiency. So we look here, and you see two models. You have the 24 volt, this 19 to 33 volts. This is a 24 volt based inverter, and this is a 48 volt based inverter. So maximum efficiency of their 24 volt models, you can see that they start out at 94%. And for their 48 volt models, they go to 95%. Now, again, when we talk about efficiency, we're talking about the way that, the amount of power it needs to convert between between DC to AC. And again, we, kind of took the calculation here. Again, this is how you do the calculations to determine how much actual power it takes to convert from DC to AC. That is what we talk about when we talk about inverter efficiency, just to remind you. And so again, we're not talking about huge leaps and bounds, okay, between one model and another model. Their 24 volt model is 94% efficient. Their 48 volt model is 95% efficient. Now let's move on to another popular brand. This right here is the Similac brand. I think that's what they call it. And as you can see here at the picture, AIM is from Ames Power, right? And I'm sure you recognize it. So let's take a look at their model. And if you look here at their efficiency rating, this is the Similac model, their efficiency rating is 88% at peak. Now, in line mode, this is when they're actually connected to utility, the line, and they're, when it's inverter charger mode. So it's at 95% efficiency when it's connected to the grid, essentially, to charge your batteries, right? Or even pass through to your appliances. Let's say it comes in from the utility, passes through your inverter to your appliances, and so it's 95% efficient. Now, in inverter mode, it's the nominal efficiency when it's inverting from DC to AC. Pulling it off your battery, this thing is 88% efficient. 88% efficient. So, and as you can see right here, the nominal input voltage is 48 volts DC. So this is a 48 volt system, and it's at 88% peak efficiency under nominal conditions. Okay, and this is the Similac or the from Ames inverter, Ames Power, as you can see here. Now let's take another a look at another brand. This one is the Cotech brand. I've heard this one, and I'd say, well, let's take a look at its efficiency as well. So you can look here, and again, let's take a look at the data sheet. And first of all, they have DC input voltage. They have they have the different types. They have the 12 volt variety, 24 volt variety, and the 48 volt variety. So if you look at the efficiency, it ranges, depending on the model you get, I suppose, it ranges from 90% up to 94%. So as you can see here, we see a trend. Okay, and the trend that we see is the fact that most 48 volt systems, you're not going to get more than 94%, except for the Vautrin model, which they claim you can get 95%. And between the 24 volts and the 48 volts, there's rarely a more than a 1% difference in efficiency. Again, efficiency being the way it converts from DC to AC. Okay, the way it converts and how much, that's this peak power efficiency. That's how it operates, how it functions, how it performs. All right, how it performs. Now, so again, we go back to each one of these inverters that we kind of took a look at, and looked at the efficiency of each particular type, and it's based on the inverter, the manufacturer, and the quality of the system. And so as you make your choice, which is whatever you choose, just kind of keep that in mind. Also, when we talk about inverters, again, there is something called the maximum continuous input current. All right, so regardless of the wire size you choose, like for instance with mine, I use 4/0 wire, and that's the biggest that I could use. And you'll find that for the majority of these inverters, there is a specific maximum input, if they show it on the data sheet, that you can actually bring into your inverter. Some of them show it on the data sheet, and some, I suppose, some do not. But you can definitely find the information, or just better yet, just call up your particular inverter supplier or distributor, and just simply ask the question, hey, what's my maximum input current that I could use? So again, this is not to spark controversy or anything like that, but to just let folks understand that there's a lot more involved in making a decision about what type of inverter to get, as opposed to somebody saying, hey, well, get this inverter because it's cool, or get this inverter because it's just better, it's just way more efficient. And as you can see here, this right here is dealing with the solar charge controller for the Vautrin system, and the solar charge controller is 98% efficient. I wouldn't doubt that in an instant, because it is an MPPT type charge controller. And again, with the Outbacks, they don't have a charge controller integrated in their system. So anyway, all right, YouTube, just my little take on the matter. Again, I offer no opinion as to what inverter you should buy or which one is better than which. It's just that I would say look at the data, look at the information. And for folks that say that 24 volt or 48 volt systems are way more efficient than 24 volt systems, I'm sorry, but the numbers just don't say that. Okay, there isn't much of a huge gap between 93% and 94% efficiency, and in all reality, unless you are a scientist or something, and you've got some instrumentation that you can actually that's dependent on that 1% efficiency increase, you'll never see it. You will just simply never see it. Now, one of the other reasons that most folks would go with the 48 volt system is if your battery bank is a ways away from your inverter, 20 feet, 30 feet, 15 feet, or something like that, then yeah, I would say okay, 48 volt system, not a problem. If you have some special wiring requirements, then yes, 48 volt system, okay, go for it. But just to say, well, I'm going to take my 24 volt system and throw it out, and and I'm going to go with a 48 volt system, it doesn't appear that the numbers support that particular decision. But anyway, thanks a lot, YouTube. Thanks for your time. If you have any questions, comments, gripes, complaints, not a problem. Just put them in the comments, and I may answer them, or I'll try to answer them if they're if they make sense. But anyway, this video again is for those folks that are looking to buy inverters, and they kind of want some information as opposed to opinion. Okay, take care, YouTube.